And I was sitting in court and I'm looking at Diddy. He's in a inmate jumpsuit. And I'm sitting here. I'm in an overflow room. So I'm watching the main courtroom from a TV monitor. And I'm just like, man, all of these weeks, all of these days, all of these hours that has been spent for us to get to this moment, I don't know if it was really worth it for the government. Diddy's attorney, she stood up at the end of everything. She stood up and she said, "This is the biggest embarrassment to the United States of America." She's talking about this whole, first of all, the whole case, but just the fact that Diddy is still sitting here on these Mann Act prostitution charges. I said, "Oh, I know what this is about, baby. They know how to feed the media, don't they?" Because that right there, that was a hell of a headline. That was a hell of a mic drop moment. Hey,
So I
y'all,
want
what's
to
up?
back. It's Loren LoRosa, and this is the latest with Loren LoRosa. This is your daily dig on all things pop culture, entertainment news, and all of the conversations that shake the room, baby. Now, I didn't plan on being in court for Diddy again until October 3rd, but there was actually a hearing about whether Diddy's charges, the two Mann Act charges, or the two Mann Act counts that he has been convicted with, whether those would be acquitted or not. Now, I was told heading into this, and I talked about this a bit on the Breakfast Club, that because Diddy, was told to come into court, of course, all of his attorneys are there, his family is there. There was some hope that this would be a day where things would be laid out and things, we would hear possibly that he would be acquitted of some things, potentially. I was told that there was hope on his end. Judge did not make a decision in court. But I'm going to be honest with y'all. I was sitting in court today, and it was short. It started at 11. It was over around like 1, like not too long after 1 o'clock p.m. And I was sitting in court, and I'm looking at Diddy. He's in a inmate jumpsuit. It's tan. His hair has been very gray with some black, but, it's longer now. Like, you can tell he hasn't cut it. He's not in like shackles or anything like that, but he is in an inmate jumpsuit. And I'm sitting here. I'm in an overflow room, so I'm watching the main courtroom from a TV monitor. And I'm just like, man, all of these weeks, all of these days, all of these hours that has been spent for us to get to this moment, I don't know if it was really worth it for the government, if I'm being honest with y'all. In the beginning of all of this, because typically with the feds, when they come for you, they got some things going on, okay? They got some things going on. Like, the feds are not just coming for you off a whim, especially not coming by land and by sea. So when I'm there and the prosecution is beginning to lay out their case that this first week, and you guys will remember, I told you, I thought Diddy's team, his defense team, his attorneys did a great job. Even from the very first day of court, I thought, even though the prosecution was laying out a case, they were slowly setting up this narrative, and they were setting us up for the slam dunk. I really thought Diddy's team did a great job of always coming back and defending, always coming back and reminding you of certain things that cast a bit of doubt, especially when it came to that RICO charge. But I thought by the end of this case, we'd be thinking maybe Diddy's looking at anywhere from 6 to 10 years with some time served. Now, I would be surprised if Diddy is going to be, I would say 3 years would be a lot for him in this situation. He's already done, it's going to be 14 months sometime soon. They're asking for time served. And today, Diddy's attorney, Shapiro, she stood up at the end of everything, at the end of them arguing back and forth for all these hours about things we'd heard them say 1,001 times. She stood up and she said, "This is the biggest embarrassment to the United States of America." She's talking about this whole, first of all, the whole case, but just the fact that Diddy is still sitting here on these Mann Act prostitution charges. I said, "Oh, I know what this is about, baby. They know how to feed the media, don't they?" Because that right there, that was a hell of a headline. That was a hell of a mic drop moment. So I want to back you guys up and just take you through what court today was like. So we were there, court begins, and they're arguing back and forth. It's kind of like a ping pong. So the defense is arguing that, basically, what are we even doing here? These are consenting adults. Cassie
Jane, and Diddy, who were in a relationship at various times with Diddy, and they decided to go and do threesomes and live this voyeurism lifestyle. And because of that, now their client, Diddy, is facing time in jail, which is not fair. They also leaned heavily into, bringing up the fact that the Mann Act and a lot of the background on the Mann Act is, has very, racial undertones. That has been a conversation. And that leans back into kind of what Diddy's team's narrative has been this whole time. Their narrative this whole time has been Diddy is a black man with money, with power, who is being targeted by the government. The prosecution came in and said, listen, we've already addressed all of that. So y'all could try that if y'all want to. We've already addressed all of that. Not only did we already address it, but a jury sat here for 7 to 8 weeks and heard all of this, all of these claims, everything that you guys are bringing up. And they decided that we needed to be here. They convicted him, not us. Diddy's team also, took a lot of time establishing what prostitution is not, and what should be considered a John or not. Because Diddy's whole team, their argument is that Diddy didn't receive any financial gain from this. So how can this be looked at as anything but him producing? They called him a great producer of amateur porn. And I'm like, not Diddy being a man all up in the videos working in his favor in court. They called him a producer of amateur porn, and they specifically said this was corroborated because you had several people get on the stand, from assistants to Jane Doe to Cassie, and talk about how well produced these king nights or these hotel nights were. Great lighting, everything was choreographed because Diddy was telling the girls what to do, what to wear. There was costume. They made it a full production, baby. And they said there's two things and two ways this can be looked at. He was a great producer of amateur porn, and he was a consumer of amateur porn, which he can't be convicted of these counts under the Mann Act because of that. That violates his First Amendment rights, which gives him the right to do so. The prosecution said that's not, we're not even going there with y'all, because the Mann Act and the way that we're angling this does not violate his constitutional rights. So let's stop there. And then that's when Diddy's team brought back in, the mic drop of, this is an embarrassment. Why are we even here? What is this all about? These people were consenting. There is not proof that Diddy benefited any way financially. Now, one thing that I thought was interesting, in court was the fact that, I think the judge has been done a really good job up until this point of being very neutral. I do think today in court, you could tell that Diddy, I don't, first of all, I predicted the judge is not going to acquit anything whatsoever. That's number one. Number two, I don't see the judge, I think, if Diddy was to get time served and be able to get the supervised released and all the things that they've asked for, I wouldn't be surprised. But I also would not be surprised if the judge says, no, we need to look at what prosecution is asking for on the minimum. Like, how can we get closer to there? Because I think one of the things that, I felt in watching and listening to the judge today in court was that, number one, he's not letting up on either side, prosecution or the defense. He wants to make his decision, and he wants to make it very sternly on the law. For instance, he asked the prosecution, he's like, listen, y'all submitted all this case law or like previous cases to prove the point that he deserves to go to jail for such and such time based on the Mann Act and, all the things. One of the cases that you guys submitted, and all the cases you guys submitted, I need a more specific reference of where a man is not financially benefiting from these commercial sex acts, and he is jailed after being convicted. I need a better example, because what y'all provided for me, there was an exchange of money. And at the time, the prosecution couldn't even, so he's like, do y'all have any more case study? The prosecution couldn't even come up with a case on the top of their head, but they said that they would provide more in their sentencing conversation. So when he did that, I'm like, okay, like it's very good to know that this judge is still being fair, even though to me, I could kind of tell that he's not going for the argument. that Diddy's team is going for with this whole acquittal thing. I do highly doubt anything will be acquitted. I thought this was an alert about the case because we're still waiting for the judge to make a decision on the acquittal. But he's being very fair. He's being very tough on both sides. I do think he's going a little bit harder on Diddy's side, though. I think Diddy's team has not proven anything with the acquittal. I think that's number one. I also think because Diddy's team, they also were making a point that when because one of the things that they're trying to define prostitution. In defining prostitution, you're able to then pinpoint, if you're the prosecution, the specific things that Diddy did that lean into what the definition of prostitution is, right? So Diddy's team is on the other side. They're trying to define prostitution from their end of things, and they're trying to lay out everything that proves that there was intent to consent by the women. So they bring up the fact that, Jane Doe mentioned she had gotten Diddy a TV so that they could watch some of the videos that they recorded, these highly produced, choreographed videos, right, that they're calling amateur porn. And Diddy's team is like, this is just like OnlyFans, right? And Diddy shaking his head yes during this. Like, she's not asking him. She's talking to the judge, but Diddy was visibly shaking his head yes in agreement. And she's making the point that with OnlyFans, when people are watching these acts or whatever they're watching there's an intention. So the woman who is recording, the intention is to show it. And the people who are watching are consumers who intend to consume. And Diddy's attorney made the point that that's exactly what was happening with Diddy and the freak-offs, and the fact that anything was being recorded. Things are being recorded not because, these women are being paid or reimbursed for an act that only benefits Diddy, but because everybody involved had the intent to watch it at the end. That was the point that was made. But I will say, I think Diddy's team, there was one question that the judge, and it was more of a clarifying question, but I thought that, this being asked as a clarifying question was very telling of where I think the judge stands. Again, this is what made me think the judge is not going to acquit any of Diddy's charges. So the judge says, okay, he's the whole time the judge is trying to get a better understanding from both sides, from prosecution and defense. So he's like, okay, to Diddy's attorneys, he's like, so you're telling me if a businessman and his client goes to a brothel and the businessman pays the brothel to have sex with his client, then this is not prostitution. And she says, no, it's not prostitution. And the judge is like, and you're saying that it's not prostitution because at this point, the businessman has no financial gain. And she's like, yeah. So he's like, okay. He's trying to understand. But he asks multiple times, like, so this is not prostitution. So he's clarifying, but the undertone to the final clarifying question, I'm like, oh yeah, no, the judge is not buying it whatsoever. In me walking into court today and sitting there and thinking, why are we here? I think, that speaks to the conversation a lot of people are going to be having about this for a very long time. Like, did the government overreach? Was everything the government did necessary? Was all the resources that were used necessary? On and on and on and so forth. But when it comes specifically to the two charges that Diddy is convicted with, I do believe that in court there was enough there to convict him. I mean, it doesn't matter what I believe. Y'all heard it from the jury. But in being in court, I will tell you, I wasn't surprised that those charges stuck whatsoever, right? So a lot of people are having a conversation now when it comes to prostitution about, is this fair? Because right now at this point, are we just minding someone's sexual business? Are we minding what goes on in Diddy's bed? Basically, right? Why does the government have their hand in a man's sex life? So they had a conversation about this in court today. And basically, the judge is asking both sides to clarify, why does the court care about this? And why should we not? So the prosecution says, the government should not mind their business because, so Diddy's team is saying, look, this was a consensual relationship. Grown adults got into, they had threesomes, they traveled, they lived this lifestyle. The things that, can be brought up as heinous or, and of course they're probably referring to the Cassie video and all those things. That's not what we are here. We're here now because of prostitution. So if we're letting all that go, the reason why the government should be out of Diddy's bedroom is because it was behind closed doors. These are consenting adults. The government was like, wait, what? No. The problem is, according to the government, any case where someone has faced a consequence for prostitution, or any law that centers around prostitution, the point of those laws is because prostitution extends an arm to bigger things, like harming the community in different ways. So they talked about laws being created around prostitution because you want to monitor abuse against women in various ways. You want to monitor drug use, and the prosecution is like, if we look at it, all of that is in this case. There were drugs given to everyone involved in this. And every time they testified, they said that the drugs came from Diddy. There was obvious abuse to women. They talk about Cassie. The prosecution, they ate with this one. So the prosecution, after Diddy's team is like, listen, this is this man's personal bed. The government should not be in his personal bed. This is an embarrassment, blah, 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 blah. The government comes back in and they're like, basically, they wanted to say embarrassment. Embarrassment, girl, where? Because let's talk about what happens behind those closed doors. They specifically say Cassie was getting her face beaten. Drugs were given to everybody, which is why in a case like this, that's why we're sitting here. The decisions were made by the defense's client. Now, listen, Diddy is to be sentenced October 3rd if nothing is acquitted. I will tell you one thing, too, that I thought was telling in the courtroom. So the judge, when the judge was ending, what the judge basically was trying to do was say, okay, if nothing is acquitted here, I will see you all next Friday. Court is adjourned. Instead of doing that, he kind of stumbled on his words a bit. The judge said, I'll see you all next, and then he stopped. He said, if nothing is acquitted, I'll see you all next week. And I'm like, oh, baby, the judge already got his mind made up. I'll see you next week, Judge. We'll all be here Friday. We'll be here light and bright. I'm Loren LoRosa. This is the latest with Loren LoRosa. At the end of the day, y'all could be anywhere with anybody talking about this, but you choose to be right here. I appreciate you guys so much, and I will see you in my next episode.